We are coming up on the end of the year. That means we get 2 more weeks of PWHL hockey in 2025. My name is Erica L Ayala. I am the founder of Black Rosie Media, which is the home of our new women's hockey podcast at Even Strength. I am joined by Rachel Donner, who is a co-host of Locked On Flyers, as well as the Locked On NHL Friday show. We are here to discuss the PWHL return to the ice after the international break. Of course, we'll talk about the rivalry series and who we think will make the team and maybe who doesn't make the team from USA, Canada, the Olympic roster, I should say. And we will close out giving you our picks of games to watch coming up in the next week. And I think, Rachel, it's safe to say that a little heated rivalry conversation will also come up.
Have to.
Yes, indeed. But for those who joined us on the other network, yes, we are back. We had the women's hockey report that we were doing, Rachel and I, every Friday. And even before that, Rachel, we were connecting as far back as the 2022 Winter Olympics to try and bring some more women's hockey coverage to the streaming and audio podcast landscape. So we're glad for those who've been with us all that time. But Rachel, we have a lot to talk about. Again, it was a return from international break. And I think we saw some teams be able to jockey for position here when it comes to the PWHL standings. And then you've got your stalwarts at the top. Boston and Montreal still there. But wouldn't you know, the Vancouver Golden Eyes, they must have listened to our last episode together.
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay. Hold my beer, Rachel and Erica.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is we knew on paper this was a very good team, right? But it was going to take a little while for them to put things together. I think you could say similar about Seattle to some degree, but more so with Vancouver, just in terms of how they started the season. And I think it's a really good sign for Vancouver specifically that they've been able to string together some really good games here. And I'm excited to see what happens with them.
Indeed. I see your point also about Seattle. I think there's probably a little more staying power for Vancouver, or at least that's my gut because of what they're doing offensively. But
yeah,
they also are giving up a lot of goals against, second only to Ottawa. And that's never a place you want to be when it comes to defensive assignments. So definitely still some work to do there. Unfortunately, still without Sarah Nurse, which is a huge blow for the Golden Eyes and potentially Hockey Canada, but we'll get into that. But a team or some teams, though, that have made way, at least in this last week in the return to play from the international break, for the Vancouver Golden Eyes and the Seattle Torrent to bump up. Minnesota and New York, respectively, in sixth place for the Frost, and right now, at the time of our recording, seventh for the New York Sirens.
Yeah, well, part of the issue for the Frost is that they went up against Boston, right? Who has, I think, I got to see them play in person in their 2-0 shutout of the New York Sirens. And the thing about their play is that, they didn't have the best game, I would say, like Boston, but they find ways to win, and their defensive structure is so on point that it was very difficult. And then, of course, you got Aaron Frankel there. Like,
doesn't hurt.
Does not hurt. But they did such a good job defensively, like aside from Aaron Frankel, of getting pucks away from net front, not allowing secondary chances, getting the puck up ice to give themselves at least opportunities offensively. Was their shooting great? Not really. There's like definitely some issues with puck management and puck movement in the offensive zone, but their defensive structure and their defense to offense transition is so good. And that's kind of the brick wall, in addition to Aaron Frankel, that the Minnesota Frost ran into.
Yeah, and I think that's your point about what happened to New York. Well, both of these teams is who they played, and we're going to talk about this on the back end of the show, Rachel, because I think similarly to what you're saying as far as Minnesota and New York, we could potentially see Seattle in particular drop down based on who they have coming up. But we'll get into that. But we also, Rachel, saw that Olivia Knowles activated, speaking of the Sirens, had been dealing with an injury, right? And has been activated to a standard contract. So we wanted to give that update. Boston, the aforementioned, a 5-game heater, record-setting run with a 5th straight win in their last win. That's the most consecutive wins in PWHL history. The Boston Fleet have also won 8 straight games against the Sirens themselves, 6 in regulation, 2 in shootouts. That goes back to April 20th, 2024. That is the longest winning streak by one team against another, and the second time a PWHL team has won 5 straight games in regulation. Toronto did that. So just a little more about what Boston is able to do. This stat, I know we said it. I'm pretty sure we said it the last time you and I were on the pod together at Even Strength, and it's remained the same. The goals for have gone up, of course. The Boston Fleet have played more games. Goals against, as our Canadian friends might say, specifically from Ontario, I believe. The goals against, 2.
I know. It's crazy.
Excuse
it's
me.
Absolutely crazy. Erin Frankel's goals against average is a 0.4. Her save percentage is a 985. 985.
I've never seen
in
that
5
before.
games. In 5 games.
That's
right?
wild.
Absolute insanity. Insanity. And, she's faced like a ton of shots here.
Yeah.
It's not like she's got nothing going on in front of her. Like it's just one of the most dominant performances I have ever seen. And, we'll get into it in the next segment about how that affects the Olympics. But
oh yeah.
and that's the thing is like this Boston team isn't gonna like run up the scoreboard a lot. They may have games here and there where they score a lot, but defensively and in net, like it's gonna be hard to get past them.
Yeah, 100%. And again, we'll talk about some teams that have that very heavy task. If you want to know specifically how we at Black Rosie Media, by way of myself and Ava Wood, think Seattle will perform there, you're going to want to check out the 206 Sports Collective. 206 is our roundup of Seattle women's sports. So that would include, of course, the Torrent, primarily women's sports. We do some Kraken conversations over there as well. And then also the Seattle Storm. But speaking of Seattle, they are on the right side of the special teams, at least on the power play, the special teams rankings right now. Seattle wasn't necessarily connecting. The 2 power play goals that they had in their most recent win at Climate Pledge Arena definitely helped bring that percentage up. So the highest percentage for power play right now, power play percentage, belongs to the Seattle Torrent at a 30.8% clip. The highest PK percentage is that good old Boston team. They are 100% on the penalty kill. I'd say that classifies as a power kill for sure.
I mean, sure.
Yeah. You're like, whatever. Like, we can ease up on the Boston praise. Okay, I get it. Moving on. There are only 3 teams that are outside of 90%. Well, technically 4 because Boston's at 100, but are lower than 90%. There are 3 teams that are lower than 90%. They are New York on the PK at 77.3%, Ottawa at 76.5%, and then 70% even for Minnesota. Now, the range is much wider when we look at the power play percentage, starting again with Seattle at 30.8, the next best 28.6 for the Boston Fleet. Then we get into the teens with Montreal, Vancouver, and Ottawa from 16, 15, and 12% respectively. Then the single digits, Minnesota and Toronto. And then there's New York. So we have one team that's perfect on the penalty kill, and we have another team that is scoreless on the power play.
Yeah, and the Sirens power play has not connected, but that being said, like, I think they've shown some improvement in terms of the puck movement, in terms of the structure. I do think, they had their chances against Boston. They ran into Aaron Frankel, right?
Yeah.
I think, they looked a little better on the pulling the goalie sequence at the end of that game, but yeah, that is definitely a barrier that they have to figure it out if they're going to start winning some more games.
Indeed. So something that we'll be keeping an eye on for the next 2 weeks to round out December and thus the 2025 portion of the season. Also want to talk about the shootout in Halifax. And René Desbiens, a season high 35 saves, and pushed aside all 5 shootout attempts. Are we even surprised? When we knew it was going to a shootout, we should have known a few things. One, that if there was a chance, MPP was going to see the shootout as many times as possible. And there's actually a stat for that. But also that Captain Clutch was going to do Captain Clutch type things. And indeed, it was Marie-Philippe Poulin scored the only goal in the shootout. The all-time leader in shootout goals, Rachel, with 7, also has the most shootout shot attempts, and has appeared in 7, or it has appeared multiple times in 7 of Montreal's 9 shootouts overall. This is 3 in a row for Montreal, including 2 over Toronto in that stretch. As much as Boston is doing a really great job, and they are, Montreal's right there as well. And if Boston loses just the one game, I think maybe people will be talking about Montreal a little bit more. But again, when you have an undefeated team, it's hard to not keep them in favor.
Yeah.
But Montreal's also putting together a pretty solid season, which, Rachel, we were curious if they were going to be able to do. Because a part of what kept them at the top of the table last season was that they were getting points early. They were getting their points early. And it seems like it's the same recipe as last season so far.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, as much as we talk about Boston being a defensive first team, Montreal is an offensive first team, right? They're the exact opposite. And so, I think there's something to that, especially early in the season when teams don't have their defensive structure generally together earlier in the season. And then things kind of even out over the course of the season. We saw that last year, but Montreal takes advantage of that early because they do have the scorers and they do have like the strong offensive defenders.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of the blue line, though, stick taps to Anna Shelbin, who got her first goal, her first regulation goal, and got it against her former team. She played with Montreal, now with the Scepters. It was her first career regular season goal in her 30th career game, and against her former team, as I just mentioned. She did score her first goal in Game 3 of the PWHL playoffs against Minnesota. And so so that would have been, I guess, in season 1. Then we have rookie Maya Labad for the Montreal Victoire, who also scored her first goal, Rachel, on her first shot attempt. We've seen that happen in the PW before. I always think that's extremely impressive. And effectively made the most of an opportunity. Unfortunately, Catherine Dubois is listed day-to-day for Montreal. And so here you get Maya coming in and is able to get her first goal. But, this was a Takeover Tour game, the first one. We didn't get the first Takeover Tour game last year, Rachel, until the top of the year in January. That was Seattle. But this is the 12th neutral site game since the league launched in 2024. And Reagan Kirk, we saw, tied a season high with 30 saves. Didn't get the win for Toronto, though, but it's good to see Kirk, is going to be someone that Toronto can rely on. They just got to get a little bit more offensive power here. But that's not all. I broke down a lot of things that happened on the ice in that Takeover Tour game, that's neutral site game in Halifax, Nova Scotia. But Rachel, there's something you wanted to talk about from this Takeover Tour game, and it's becoming an ongoing theme here at Black Rosie Media, and I personally am here for it.
Yeah, or maybe just for me. But no, I feel
fine.
like
I love it. We had a whole conversation before we recorded, y'all, about
Heated Rivalry, which has absolutely broken containment for sure amongst the masses, but also I think has started to like creep into actual hockey land in some really fun ways. We've seen a bunch of NHL teams which play a particular song that was used effectively in the show. I don't want to like really spoil it, but I don't know if a song choice is a spoiler, but we've seen arena DJs play songs that have been used in the show. We saw the Montreal Canadiens play the trailer at more than one game, by the way, not just the one game. And now we've seen the author of the Heated Rivalry book and Game Changers series, Rachel Reed, who is a hockey fan and a Montreal Canadiens fan, but also a women's hockey fan. She read the lineup in the locker room for the Montreal Victoire prior to the game. I think that's maybe why they won, but I can't speak to that specifically, but this show has consumed me in a way that no other piece of pop culture has in years. It is so good. It is so good. And I'm so glad like actual hockey land is like embracing it.
I feel like, I've gotten a chance to talk to you about this. Angelica and I talked about it. Ava Wood is actually who kind of put me on because I was like being grumpy about, colonizer culture being celebrated in November, but I think you're right. Including, I talked about this with Angelica, but Harrison Brown having an appearance in, I guess what that would have been episode 3, 4, something like that. 4, episode 4. I haven't seen the most recent episode, so after we record, I'm gonna go check that out. Apparently I'll only have one more left after that, which makes me sad, but I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. I came in cold, didn't know anything about Heated Rivalry, the show. I didn't know about the book series. And so I think it's just been great, as you said, to see the culture embrace it. And I look forward to diving deeper and learning more because I am a book reader. I seldom get to read just for fun these days, but when I find this is all the more reason if I find a series or even nonfiction. I actually have a nonfiction book that I'm reading about Black basketball players, primarily men, but given what's happening in the WNBA and like the men of the 70s, I'm reading it to find some comps. Anyway, that I will save for some of our basketball podcasts. So check us out on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, or Tempestagi Talk, which I said is also a part of the 206 Sports Collective. Anyway, I think it's great. And I feel like, people have been ready for this moment because it is a fictional story. It is, as you said, kind of making its way through hockey culture, which, I mean, hockey culture can't even agree on where women and melanated people should be in quote unquote hockey culture. But the fact that we're embracing this, I hope it's in earnest, and I hope that it leads to conversations that led to authors like we've seen, and creatives through the series, like we've seen. There's an important representation that's happening here, and you and I were actually kind of nerding out about like cinematography and storytelling and things of that nature. And I just think there's a lot of care that's going into this. And this is speaking from someone who hasn't identified culturally, or like as far as my community is not necessarily at the forefront in any of these stories yet that I know of. But I think it's great. And I know we have Striatic who often will comment and has said this before, but it's not just for the girls. It's not just for the gays, although it's definitely for the girls and the gays, but it's for people who like good storytelling, and hockey fans deserve good storytelling.
It's true. And that's the thing, is that, it is, as most romance stories are, a universal story. That, and you run against, every relationship in a romance runs up against a roadblock, and in this case it's hockey culture is the roadblock here. And I think it's something that a lot of us who have been in and around women's hockey in particular, we've run into these roadblocks with the various women's leagues over the years, and various things that have happened, and decisions that get made, or things that happen, or things that have conspicuously not happened, yet,
like policies being drafted, perhaps.
And the fact that this is the world, and we know this world about, all these things happening in the hockey world, that this story is being told with that backdrop, and the care that's being taken in the storytelling by Jacob Tierney and the rest of the creative team around it, has just made it such an incredible journey to watch. I'm excited that there's a season 2, and I'm excited to see what other kind of collaboration and what kind of effect this story has on the hockey community and the women's hockey community too.
So if you're like me and you have not, and we also talked about this off line, so to speak, Rachel, but you feel that watching the series is still a friendly and enjoyable experience for someone who has not read the books.
Correct.
Okay, so you don't necessarily have to go back and read the books if you don't want to, or if
but you should, because they're good.
But you should, yes, exactly. So,
but even if you do it afterwards,
right,
it's fine.
Exactly. So, like, a particular series involving wizards in the UK. Maybe the movies got you there, but if you want to go back and read the books, you absolutely can. So I'm excited. I've told you, I like, just because I love storytelling, and I love, just really good directing, good acting. Again, the writing seems to be really good. I'm very excited.
Give Connor Story every single award ever created for acting. Like so yesterday.
He's
yesterday.
Delicious in that role. Like the timing, the
Hudson
choices.
is great too. Hudson is excellent too. I want to make that clear. But
I mean, I will anyway. Like, again, if we need a critic, maybe that's my next career, is like a movie and TV series critic. I think I'm on my way. But anyway, we'll move on, at least for this episode. Heated Rivalry, definitely go check it out. And we will see where the story brings us come the next episode, Rachel. But for us, we are going to keep in the theme of rivalry, because we are going to talk about the rivalry series that wrapped up in 2025. Again, mentioned that international break. There was also Euro Tour that was happening. If you're not already, I talk about this a lot. We're not going to get into the Euro Tour very much on this episode, but if you're not already following the Czech Women's Hockey Report, definitely check out our good friend Preston. Has been on our former show that Rachel and I did together, the Women's Hockey Report. So now, Preston, you've got that name on lock all by yourself. But Czech Women's Hockey Report, great job. Preston also has a pronunciation guide. I, as someone who's been a broadcaster and analyst on air for women's hockey, has come into a lot of challenges with what is the right pronunciation. Preston's guide is pretty solid, but as I always say, check with the athlete first. We all make mistakes, as someone also kindly pointed out on our YouTube channel for me, and I'll admit it. So we can own our mistakes and still try to be better, and Preston does a great job with that. So we're not going to talk about Euro Tour, but we are going to talk about Rivalry Series. And it's pretty straightforward, Rachel. It's been all Canada.
or not all Canada, as
or excuse me,
case
it's been all USA. My brain is clearly not working at this moment.
I mean, the drama has been all Canada. That is
That's
for
fair.
sure.
Yes, it has been all USA in the Rivalry Series in this installment. They took the first 2 games. We played 2 in December. They took those 2, and one was a thumping of historic measure. So I think really, what did this teach us, if anything? How much should we read into Rivalry Series knowing that we're just a couple of months away from the Olympics?
Yeah, I think it told us everything and it told us nothing all at once.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, it's just like being a poli-sci major. You can do everything and nothing at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly. It's God, I feel called out as a poli-sci minor. Anyway,
at least you didn't major in it like I did.
But that being said, obviously, as we know, Team USA swept all 4 games in the series, the 2 US-based games, the 2 Canadian-based games, outscored 24-7. And I think that when you look, and we talked about this when the rosters came out, the approaches were very different, right?
Yes.
Team USA went in there with their roster pretty much set, and a game plan of, we're going to fine-tune our lines, we're going to get dialed in, we're going to build chemistry, and we're going to build up to the Olympics, where Canada still had a lot of tinkering to do. And they brought a very different team to the first 2 games versus the second 2. The second 2 games were ostensibly supposed to be closer to their final Olympic roster, but they were still messing around with things. And I think it's just sort of the lack of consistency there and a lack of an overall, I think, game plan that led to those losses. Now, could they have learned everything they needed to and put it all together for the Olympics? 100%.
Yeah.
With the talent on this team, you cannot take anything for granted. And that's why I say we learned everything and we learned nothing. Right.
If you are Team USA, you're loving the results going into Rivalry Series for all of the reasons that Rachel mentioned, including that we really saw some young players, and young being relative, right? But also potential first-time Olympians really stand out. And we'll talk about some of those players. Now, as the broadcast also reminded us, if you are a Hockey Canada fan, what you are reminding yourself every single day based on these Rivalry Series games is that the United States was dominant going into the first ever women's Olympic hockey tournament, just to lose to Canada in the gold medal game. So there you go. It ain't over till it's over, Rock. So we'll see how Hockey Canada can make some changes. But I think it has called into question. I've talked with Angelica about this on Black Rosie Media. You and I have mentioned it. I mean, at least for the last year, what do we know about Troy Ryan, Gina Kingsbury, and the buttons they're pressing comparative to the plan that we've seen Team USA execute? Because to your point, they didn't need to tinker because they were doing that prior to this last installment of the Rivalry Series.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating here, because I think that, Troy Ryan has not shown great success at the professional level either. And that's where I feel like, bringing the PWHL into this conversation makes sense, because, Toronto's been fine, but not great. And I think that when you look at a coach that needs to get a team where the whole is better than the sum of its parts, he's not been able to do that effectively at the pro level. And so you translate that to Team Canada, which has, maybe other than goaltender, the best parts. If you can't put that together, even to win a rival 1 out of 4, just one, to me, that's a problem. Now, are they like the ship has sailed? Like, they're obviously not going to make a change for the Olympics here, but this is it for him. This is absolutely it for him.
I think it has to be. And that's why I mentioned Kingsbury as well, because she is a part of that Hockey Canada coaching staff. And, you know, similarly to what you said about Troy Ryan, the success has maybe been more muted than people expected in the PWHL. So, you know, how much, and this is what we're still very much learning. What is the impact of PWHL play on especially the North American teams and vice versa? And I don't think that goes just for players. I think personnel and staff are going to be evaluated at both levels, and maybe to the point where, I mean, I was going to say, oh, maybe one team kind of fleeces another. It doesn't really work like that in the PWHL because it's still that single ownership, you know, structure. But, you know, maybe just to shake things up, are we going to see things change in Toronto? And by Toronto, I mean for the Scepters or maybe even for Hockey Canada. I guess that is all to be figured out. But again, I wanted to talk about and give some stick taps to some young talent. There was a lot of conversation going into what was the fourth installment of the 2025 rivalry series, because Chloe Primerano did not play in game 3, that absolute like butt kicking that the USA put on Hockey Canada. Now, she did suit up for the 4-1 game. That was a 4-1 loss, the most recent game, game 4. But, you know, again, you have you have the young talent from the NCAA come to the rivalry series just to healthy scratch. Like that's such an odd choice to me, Rachel, because again, with no centralization and no residency, USA players or hopefuls that are in college are leaving their schools at small stretches to be with the national team. And it just seems like if you weren't going to use Chloe, then maybe you don't bring Chloe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really tough because I feel like she needs to be in there. Like, I do think as a general rule, you lean on your veterans in the Olympic years. The World Championships,
That's fair.
You can tinker around a lot more. I think there's a lot more impact on, you know, obviously because it's only every 4 years, right? Worlds are every year. So
Right.
I think that there's a little bit more opportunity to let younger players play in Worlds. But that being said, you gotta at least give a couple of these younger players some opportunities here and just see what they can do, especially given the fact that whatever they were doing was not working for Team Canada.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And so they did give her a shot. I don't, you know, nobody was playing great for Team Canada in that game, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it was a tough one. But I do think that there's something to be said for that.
Now, someone who did have a really good showing, and I think is making a case to have a significant part for Team USA, is Abby Murphy. Is an Olympian, got a silver medal in 2022, has 2 golds in World Championships and 2 silvers, and also has 2 golds at the U18 level. And also 1 silver. So, I mean, Abby Murphy needs to be a centerpiece of what we see Team USA do when it comes to, I'm going to say Milano Cortina, because that's how the locals say it.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about Team USA for me, is because you have players like Abby Murphy who, you know, get a hat trick in a rivalry series game, right? And kind of take over, and she's a little bit younger. But you also have Hillary Knight doing what she
didn't also have a hat trick.
Right. And so I feel like we're getting a much more balanced approach to scoring from Team USA in terms of the players that are newer versus, I mean, nobody's like a rookie, but like in terms of like the newer players versus the veterans, and the right combinations are being put together here. And I just, that's what's so impressive to me about what Team USA is doing. But yeah. Abby Murphy is like, she is by far one of the standout players there.
100%. In the rivalry series for Team USA, I think Layla Edwards got stronger every single game.
Yep.
And I think so much of the conversation was, well, Edwards has to play on the blue line in order to even have a chance to make this team. And if we're seeing Layla Edwards play a more defensive-minded game because she's a blue liner, and she's still a very integral part of the offense, more so on facilitating, right? Getting assists or even getting, not just the hockey assist, so that second assist, but just playmaking to even set up the goal, 2-3 passes ahead of time. I just think that Layla Edwards, again, has gotten so much more comfortable through this rivalry series. And that's a good example of why you want to give players time in this rivalry series. And another thing that USA, I think, has done more effectively is they've given their younger goaltenders a lot of repetitions in the last couple of world championships, and of course in the rivalry series, to the point where, honestly, Rachel, I do not even understand it, that anyone that thinks it's a question if Team USA is going to bring both Erin Frankel and Gwyneth Phillips. Like, at this point, like, I just don't know how you question those two making this roster.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Frankel's your number one, and you're gonna play her as often as possible. Maybe you give Phillips one game, but other than for injury purposes, it does not matter who the third goaltender is. Maybe it's Maddie Rooney, but okay, whatever. It's going to be Erin Frankel, with probably Phillips getting one game during the round robin games, and
Right.
and that's what they got to do.
100%. I agree with you. I think the question is, how much time does Phillips get? Because we've seen Team USA ride a goaltender throughout the entire tournament. I mean, it's 7 games. It's very doable. And, I just don't know that. I don't understand, I guess, why people think that Rooney and Hensley are still the duo when clearly it's Frankel and Phillips right now. That being said, for the last 2 games, it was not Rooney nor Hensley that was a part of the goalie trio. It was McNaughton, right? Ava McNaughton. So I guess the question becomes, and as you said, I don't know that it matters all that much for Team USA, but what do you think Team USA will do when it comes to that third goaltender? Do we get maybe Rooney or Hensley as perhaps a farewell, or do you give you say, okay, I don't even have to finish the sentence. You're like, it's going to be Rooney or Hensley. You already have alluded to this, but given what we've seen in PWHL, but also perhaps with the last few rivalry series, as well as Worlds, do you have an opinion on maybe if it's Rooney or Hensley that occupies that third spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably Rooney, but honestly, between the two of them, I don't know that it matters that much in the grand scheme of things. But I could see it being Hensley too. But I just think from track record, in the past, Rooney makes more sense, but I like Nicole Hensley equally. So,
yeah,
and her numbers are slightly better in the same number of games in the PWHL so far this season. So, if you're just going strictly on numbers, sure, it's Nicole Hensley.
Yeah, my gut is saying Rooney, and I would not be shocked and awed if it's not Rooney.
Yeah,
but I would absolutely riot if it's not Phillips and Frankel as 1 and 2, or Frankel and Phillips as 1 and 2. Now, I think we have a similar, though not the same, conversation on the Hockey Canada side. It's going to be Anne-Renee Desbiens and Emryn Smashmeyer. The question for them is not, it doesn't matter who the third one, but like quite literally, who could it possibly be? Because we haven't seen anyone, whether it's Gascon, right? Or Ev,
Or
right?
Kaylee Osborne.
Even going back a few rivalry series / world championship lead ups, we've seen Corrine Schroeder in and out of that system, but there has been no development of the aforementioned young goalies. And so, in some sense, I guess it doesn't matter, but also when Renee Desbiens and Mashmeyer become the Rigsby of Hockey Canada, who takes the net? And I don't know that we even have remotely close to an answer.
Yeah, I mean, Gascon seems to have the edge here in terms of who's next in the order of operations, but like I said, it could be Kaylee Osborne, who's played generally pretty well in the PWHL this season. And that to me is, Gascon has gotten some Hockey Canada games in, as has Osborne, but in terms of more regularly playing up against the top competition and the top skaters, Osborne has the edge on that front in terms of playing in the pros and just skating against these top players that you're going to see in the tournament. And so for the third goaltender, maybe they go with the safer choice there. But I would say just on merit, it's probably Gascon.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Osborne has looked really good for New York. I know we talked about them earlier. They have a little bit of work to do as far as finding their footing again in the standings. And Kaylee Osborne had a great game. She played a fantastic game against Hannah Murphy's. We did not see Corrine Schroeder for the Seattle Torrent go up against her first team, or excuse me, her first team, her former team in the first head-to-head between New York and Seattle. But that kind of, Rachel, brings us to the next segment that we want to talk about, and that is, of course, the upcoming schedule for the PWHL and our specific games to watch. So we are dropping this episode on Saturday, December 20th. So we have Vancouver hosting Montreal. Then on Sunday, December 21st, you've got 3 games on the docket, including New York hosting Toronto and Minnesota versus Ottawa. That will be one of the neutral site or takeover tour games they're going to be playing in Chicago. Don't forget, we broke that news because I was keeping eyes on LinkedIn. I think that was the first episode on the other platform that Ava joined us. That was an interesting find on LinkedIn. You got to do your sleuthing any way you can. Then we have that same Sunday, December 21st, Seattle hosting Boston. Then we close out ahead of the Christmas holiday, Tuesday, December 23rd, Toronto hosting Ottawa. And also on Tuesday, December 23rd, to wrap up the games pre-Christmas, Seattle will host Montreal at Climate Pledge Arena. So let's just focus on those games as we, again, come to our penultimate week of December, coming up on our penultimate week of December. What is your game to watch, or maybe a team to watch in this next slate of games, Rachel?
Well, I will be there in person covering the New York Sirens, hosting the Toronto Scepters. And I have not seen the Scepters in person yet this season. So very excited to do that. I think it's a team that is very much in flux. And I think that should be an interesting game to see in person. But I mean, that Seattle-Boston game is looking real interesting to me right now.
I think you know what my pick is. Again, I cover Seattle hockey, Seattle sports overall, 206 Sports Collective. Check us out. We are also on TikTok, and so is At Even Strength, mind you. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, that is my game to watch. I'm actually keeping eyes on the Seattle slate because, as we mentioned, and I'll throw Vancouver in there, or so maybe what I'm really trying to say is that I'm keeping eyes on Montreal because Montreal has a chance and Boston have a chance to kind of humble these expansion teams. But wouldn't it be something if Boston's first loss comes to not only an expansion team, but the Seattle expansion team that I think has had to grit and grind their points a little bit more than Vancouver, just because they just got one of the, or their highest scoring game. They got 4 goals the other night. And so I think they're still very much trying to find their offense. But if it has been found, That could be a very interesting game against Montreal, who is a team that does not score a lot of goals, but they also don't give up a lot of goals. We talked about that at the top. Boston, they are stingy. Absolutely stingy. They've only given up 2 on the entire season, but Montreal's right there as well. So I do think Seattle, or however you want to look at it, Seattle slate, Montreal slate, either way, those are going to be compelling games that will impact the next conversation, Rachel, that we have about the standings.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that is going to be a fun one for sure. And especially to see Hillary Knight go up against, her old team and stuff. That there'll be some narrative, quote unquote, around that one. So
100%. Well, make sure to tell us in the comments, what game do you have circled? And again, we do know we have holidays coming up. Some people are already celebrating Hanukkah. We've got Christmas, we've got Kwanzaa, all kinds of things, catching up with family, wrapping up business stuff. So we will have an episode in between the Christmas holiday and New Year's. It will be a lighter load, just keeping it pretty simple, but we'll update you on this slate. And then we have another Takeover Tour game that's happening in Dallas, and that will also feature Seattle. We'll get into that as well. But as always, I'm so grateful to hop on the mic with Rachel Donner and talk some women's hockey. I know we've mentioned it before, Rachel, but before we head out of here, let folks know where they can interact with your hockey work and with your social media handles and follows. How can they keep up with you as you are following that game, as you said, where you get to see Toronto in person for the first time?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky at rmiriam and on Instagram at rmiriam12, and I'm writing about the PW on Hockey Hot Stove.
Woohoo! I know that's a new one for you. I'm super excited for that. I also mentioned some of the men's hockey stuff at the top of the show. Again, my name is Erica L Ayala. I can't even get my name right. We're going to do this. All right, here we go. And my name is Erica L Ayala. I am your founder of Black Rosie Media, the home of At Even Strength and the 206 Sports Collective, where we do talk women's hockey, but we also talk women's basketball and all kinds of things in between. So please do give us a follow at Black Rosie Media. You can also follow At Even Strength if you want to follow this show specifically. We have a TikTok handle, and we are excited as we get through December, and then the countdown begins, Rachel, for the Milano Cortina 2026 Olympics. Hey, the stadium and the seats in the stands might not be done, but either way, we're going to be talking women's Olympic ice hockey. So stay tuned. But for Rachel, again, my name is Erica, and thanks for joining us. We'll catch you on the next episode of At Even Strength.